Good evening, everybody, and welcome to What's Brewing, another live episode of our Hangouts on Air with Mobile Cup of Joe. Good evening, and hello, and welcome. I'm so glad that you're with us. I am your bearded barista, Alvie. Here joining us, as usual, is the Brew Crew. We've got Chuck bringing the ones and zeros, Mobile Cup of Joe, our Grandmaster here, and also joining us for hopefully at least a little bit here is Spec Sheet Tony. He's here actually currently. And click over there before he has to leave. He is at the hospital in the waiting room, committed to this show and committed to the viewers and listeners of this show. He is about to watch a baby be delivered, his own little baby boy. Still, the name is up in the air. Alvie's a strong name. I say go for it. But everybody's here except for Fred. Fred is away at he's got a gig, actually. He's a professional musician now. He's leaving. No, I'm kidding. But he does have a music gig, so he won't be with us tonight. But we've got a special show for you. It's a roundtable on what makes a device superior. So, Tony, I'm glad you were able to jump in. This is like right up your alley, bud. But we'll have a little roundtable. It may turn into a triangle before the night's over, but Tony, if you got to jump on out, just go ahead and interrupt or anything and just say bye to everybody before we do that. But yeah, let me go over a few things before we get started. First off, here's some stuff coming up before we get to our roundtable. We got, of course, our freshly brewed news, which is we've got 2 tablets to talk about, Samsung and YouTube's music and video stuff. Changes to Verizon's early termination fees. Excuse me, you got ETFs over here. That's early termination fees. And also, as usual, we do have our Espresso Shot with Joe here in just a bit. But before we get to all of that, let me remind you, if you are watching live, the Q&A is live and available. So if you've got any questions or comments or concerns or rebuttals for any of the Brew Crew or anything that we talk about here this evening, go ahead and hit it up in the Q&A. You can also talk to us on our hashtag MCOJBrew. That's hashtag Mobile Cup of Joe, MCOJBrew. All one word there. So hit us up on any of the socials. We keep an eye on that during the show. So you can comment there. You can also comment on the event page, and you can also comment on the YouTube page later in the week. So anything, if you want to get in touch with us, we're available. I promise you that. So if you're watching live, hit the Q&A, and if you're watching or listening on the podcast later in the week, go ahead and hit up the hashtag or comment somewhere, and we'll try to answer or get to your question just as soon as we can. So let's go ahead and get started, guys. The more we talk, or the more I talk, the less Tony gets the chance to. So let's talk. Chuck, what's going on? Ones and zeros. Let's talk some freshly brewed news. What's up?
Well, we had a lot of news this week, but first I just want to say that, Tony, you have the coolest wife ever, because if I tried to pull that off, I don't think I'd be going home from the hospital. So.
As I walked out of the room, she said, I see, I do love you more. So yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Oh, so what do we have this week? Well, got a lot of interesting news, I think, at least, from Android world. There wasn't a whole lot in the Apple world this week. Not a whole lot in the Microsoft world. Well, I guess technically there was something in Nokia world, which Microsoft owns Nokia now. Or did that ever go through? I'm not really sure whether it did or not.
The way I understand it, they own the Lumia stuff, but not Nokia.
Okay, so they own the Lumia stuff. So this Nokia thing. So this leads perfectly into the first thing, which was the Nokia N1 Tablet. Nokia announced this week. Think of basically an iPad that runs Android, and that's pretty much what you got for the Nokia N1, which I'll be honest with you, I'm super stoked about. I am an Android person. I like Android tablets, but arguably the iPad has the nicest build of any tablet that's out there right now. It's solid, works well, battery life is great. Of course, you'll have, I'm sure, all the Android people out there going, oh, it's an iPad clone. You'll have all the iOS people going, Apple people going, it's an iPad clone. So, you know what? I think it's awesome. If this were available right now, I would return my Nexus 9 right now and go buy this thing. Yes, absolutely. It is stock Android Lollipop. So there is no skin over top of it from what they've announced. So it is completely stock, which is great for a tablet. It is running an Intel Atom processor, which is kind of interesting for a tablet if you think about it. Short of the Microsoft Surface tablets or the Microsoft Windows tablets, in the Android world, you don't really see a lot of Intel Atom processors. There are a couple, not a lot. But Nokia does have the Lumia Windows tablet, which I'm guessing probably runs Intel Atom, so they're probably familiar with the architecture enough to know how to get it to run pretty efficiently. So it is Intel Atom. I believe it's 64-bit. Comes with expandable memory. It is stock Android Lollipop, like I said. There was some, when it was first announced, people weren't sure whether it was going to come with the full suite of Google Play services or not. I believe it was Android Police, reached out to Nokia, and they did confirm that, yes, it will ship with full Google Play services, so they will get CTS. They are going to pass the CTS. For those of you who aren't familiar with the CTS, that's kind of Google's suite of tests that they run against your device to be certified for the Play Store, all the Google services, all that kind of stuff, which means you're kind of bound by what Google says you have to do, which is good news. Now, the only bad news about it is they've said that it will ship to China in early 2015 and later in other markets later in the year. So unfortunately, I think by the time this rolls to the U.S., it's going to be obsolete, which kind of stinks, because if they could push this out to the U.S. right now, I think it would sell tremendously.
So why is it taking them a year to get to market? Do you know?
I can speculate.
Right.
So Nokia's channel here in the U.S. has always been through Microsoft. So their phones, their Lumia, so they have the ability to sell here in the U.S. because they come through Microsoft. Microsoft's already got a presence here in the U.S. They can do the marketing. They can do that kind of stuff. So this is Nokia itself. It's not the Microsoft Nokia. So they really don't have a U.S. presence. It's kind of like Lenovo. They don't really have a super strong U.S. presence, and it's hard to break into the U.S. market. So I suspect they're trying to figure their strategy out. This is probably their first Android tablet, and furthermore, probably their first tablet that doesn't have any Microsoft influence on it. So a little bit of testing the water, a little bit of figuring things out, and probably getting the approval from Google itself for the Play services. That's always a tricky thing to do unless you know what you're doing. So any one of those or a combination of all those could be the factor behind it.
Right, and all the the Nokia products that are here in the U.S. right now, those are all Lumia products. And even before the whole Microsoft deal went through, those were still Nokia Lumia products. You look at the Nokia Asha line, or the Nokia X, I think was the Nokia phone that kind of, sort of, technically, but not really ran Android. So those were all Nokia products, but those never really saw the way into the United States, because the only ones we've ever had from Nokia have been those Lumia products. So kind of Chuck was saying, Nokia is huge in a lot of other countries like India and different places like that. But here in the U.S., while they might be one of the biggest manufacturers of Windows Phone devices, especially now being under the ownership of Microsoft, Nokia in the U.S. is just not that popular of a brand. Now, I would absolutely love for this tablet to make its way to the U.S. because I'm still rocking a 2013 Nexus 7 right here. And granted, it's a nice tablet, but I'm kind of looking time for an upgrade and something a little bit of a bigger screen. So hopefully it does, but it just kind of, with the market as it is right now, Nokia's presence, still just kind of with those factors involved, is kind of holding the thing down on whether or not we're going to see this thing ever make its way into the States or anytime soon, if that.
Well, and this was arguably a bad move for Nokia, just for the simple fact that this isn't actually a Nokia tablet, just because it's branded Nokia. It's a Foxconn tablet, and it's branded Nokia. So Nokia contracted Foxconn to build it, which, as much as I hate Foxconn, is why they can do it so cheap. It's a $250 tablet selling it's a $500 to $600 tablet selling at a $250 price point, which I'm not even sure how we have the $250 price yet, since we don't know. It won't even be released till late next year. But I don't think this is a very good move for Nokia, because everybody loves their build quality, and they didn't produce this device. It's weird. I don't know. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on one. Definitely really looking forward to checking it out. But I definitely think that Nokia should have just gone on the up and up and brought a tablet out themselves.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned Foxconn. For those of you guys who may not know, Foxconn also conveniently manufactures almost all of Apple's stuff. So the reason that this probably looks exactly like an iPad mini is because of that Foxconn relationship. To give you guys a few specs here, to compare the Nokia N1 to the iPad Mini 3. The Nokia N1 has a 7.9-inch screen. It is 326 ppi. It's a 12 2048 by 1536. The iPad Mini 3 is a 7.8-inch screen, also the exact same 326 ppi and 2048 by 1536. The weight on the iPad Mini 3 is 331 grams, and it's 7.5 millimeters thick. The Nokia N1 is 318 grams and 6.9 millimeters thick. So, as you can see on the screen right there, if you basically got rid of Nokia branding and put a big Apple sticker on the back of that with an iPad, people probably wouldn't even know the difference. Which I think is good and bad. I think that the one thing Nokia could have done that would have made this killer, front-facing speakers. Now, I understand that would have broken from the design, and probably the reason that they could get this so dirt cheap, like Tony said. It's supposedly going to retail for $249. Now, let's see if that's the price once it comes here to the U.S., or if that's a Chinese price to try and break into the Chinese market.
My wife's water just broke, so I'm actually going to take off a little bit earlier than I was going to. I'm glad I got to spend 15 minutes with you guys, though, and I'll definitely look forward to watching this tomorrow. And thank you, everybody who watched, and thanks if you're listening later. I'm going to go have a baby.
Hey,
congratulations.
Congratulations,
We'll
man.
see
Good luck,
you,
Tony.
soon.
All right, see you guys later.
So yeah, with Tony being gone, if you didn't catch that, he is about to have a baby. So keep him in. Bringing his first baby boy, which we're going to dub Alvie until he tells us something different.
Awesome.
But but seriously, go hit him up, especially on Google+. That's where he's most active. But he's on Twitter. He's on all the socials. Send him some congratulations and well wishes and all that to Tony McAfee for his first baby. So we're all really excited for him for that. He joins the parent club. So Joe, you're next, but hopefully no time soon. So let's move right along. We've got another tablet to talk about. Chuck, talk to us a little bit quickly about this. Now, is it Jala? How do you say this?
I'm
Yola.
not actually sure. How is it? Sorry, go ahead.
Yola.
Yola. Okay.
Yola.
I'm like 90% sure, but I mean I could be wrong.
Yeah, I actually don't know how to pronounce it. So this is the Yola tablet, which is running their Sailfish OS. Sailfish OS. I want to say it came from a different project, but I'm not going to say it one way or the other because I don't 100% know. But basically, this is their first tablet. They're crowdsourcing it. It has absolutely slaughtered their goals for crowdsourcing. It's an entirely unique OS, kind of built around the Linux core. It uses the Qt5 widgets. For those of you guys who are kind of Linux nuts in the crowd, Qt5 is what KDE, the desktop, uses, whereas GNOME or GNOME, however you want to pronounce it, uses GTK. So this is Qt5. It's a really, really nice-looking OS. So kind of think about Ubuntu OS or Ubuntu Touch or whatever they ended up calling it, but way better. It looks a lot better. It's a lot smoother. I would happily buy this tablet. And the one thing that Yola and Sailfish OS does right is it runs Android apps natively. So the one big problem, with any tablet manufacturer, and even Microsoft has this problem, to be honest with you, is once you go outside of the iOS or Android ecosystems, apps. And Ubuntu has the same problem. You can't get any apps. Who's going to write apps for an ecosystem that's maybe third or fourth, largest, but a huge way behind third or fourth? So this was incredibly smart on their part to let it run Android apps. I think it's going to sell a lot, and obviously by the Kickstarter, a lot of people want this thing.
All right, so if it's running Android apps but it's not Android, is there any legal ramifications for them on that, or is that part of the open source thing? They're okay to do that?
I think as long as it's the same way that you can sideload stuff onto your Android phone. I think as long as they don't bundle the Play Store, which obviously they can't, they wouldn't pass Google CTS. But who knows? Maybe they bundle the Amazon. Maybe they do something with Amazon and bundle their app store. I mean, the thing is the market right now is really ripe for someone to work with Amazon and bundle their Amazon app store in direct competition with Google. Yeah, you wouldn't get Gmail or some of the other Google things, but you're going to get a lot of other things. And that's not to say that this doesn't have an app already for Gmail. So I don't think there's any legal ramifications. It would be just like sideloading something onto your phone.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because actually on the latest update to BlackBerry 10, they actually made it so you can like get the Amazon App Store and download Android applications from that. So I think it is just with the open sourcing with Android. But I know like I'm definitely looking forward to this tablet, and I think they said the expected retail price is going to be somewhere around $250 or $300 around there. So definitely nothing too expensive. And that Sailfish OS that was first introduced on the Yola phone, which came out earlier this year, I believe. But with Sailfish 2.0, it looks fantastic and really looks like it's going to be awesome for especially a tablet form factor. And if it's running Android applications, I'm all for it too, because I mean, as sweet as Lollipop is right now, my OnePlus One, I'm always open to testing out a brand new operating system, because right now in this market, it's pretty much iOS or Android and then Windows Phone if you want to count that. But I mean, it's always cool though. I mean, it's very rare we get a full-fledged brand new operating system. So even just for that, even if the tablet itself sucks, just to test out something I haven't used before is going to be very cool in its own right.
Yeah, and especially something that's kind of established, the Sailfish. Like, it's not like the first thing they've done, so they've got the growing pains hopefully out of the way. Yeah, I'm kind of excited to check it out too. I remember when they announced that, whatever, a year ago, I wanted to flash it to a phone or a tablet that I had, but nothing was like available other than it was completely broken. I'm like, well, I still need to use my stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to check that thing out too. So you talk about the App Store. There was somebody on either Twitter or Google Plus today. You guys may have seen it. There was a paid App Store kind of thing that was running separately of Google Play Store. So it wasn't like the Google Play Store is separate, but they're having to close down for tax reasons. I wonder if that's something they could pick up on. I don't know. I don't know enough about all this stuff. It's just one of those, like, when you're talking, Chuck, maybe Amazon App Store, maybe something else. Like, Amazon's got their Fire stuff. They may not be willing to jump on this Kickstarter phone or tablet, but this other one maybe.
They may or may not, but also remember that Verizon bundles the Amazon App Store with almost every one of their Android phones. Mm-hmm. So, Amazon's not afraid to play ball with Android phones. I still understand why Verizon does that, because why would anyone ever install the Amazon App Store when you have Google Play? But that's a discussion for another day.
Well, Chuck, who doesn't love more bloat on your device, though? I mean, that's part about your phone.
Speaking of Verizon, this is actually a very good segue into our next story, isn't it? Verizon. So, as if Verizon didn't make enough money already, unfortunately, I am a Verizon customer. I don't have any other choice. Verizon, they really like to do this whole, love me, hate me, almost like they're bipolar, because, they really are. So 2 weeks ago, they're ready to play ball, and they said, you know what, we're cutting our 10 and 15 gig prices by $20. Awesome, great for the consumer, right? I love saving that. I signed up for the promotion, and I've heard rumors it's only for a year, but I read all the fine print, and nowhere does it say it's only a year. So if it's only for a year, Verizon, I'm going to be awfully ticked off. But that being said, I saved $20 on my bill. Awesome, great. You know what? Hey, Verizon, cool. And you know what, Verizon, you're getting the Nexus 6. All right, cool. We're all kind of getting happy. Verizon's, finally maybe actually listening to someone for once. And then they go and say, just when you were getting happy with us, no, we can't have that. We've got to be the most hated carrier. I swear it's the same CEO that runs Verizon that runs Comcast. They just love to be hated. Anyway, so that was a very long introduction to what I'm about to say, which is Verizon has decided that now you have to be in your contract for 8 months before they're going to start lowering your early termination fee. The way it works it used to work with Verizon and works with pretty much every other carrier is every month you have your service, they prorate your early termination fee. So I think the standard early termination fee is like $350 now for a smartphone, somewhere around there. So they might say, every month you're with us, we're going to take $20 or $30 off the early termination fee, which the early termination fee, for those of you guys who don't know, anytime you buy a subsidized phone, so anytime you see that $99 phone, that's a subsidized phone. The problem is that comes with a 2-year contract. You're basically selling your soul for 2 years to a carrier, T-Mobile being the exception. And also, obviously with these Next plans and these pay-per-month plans, those aren't contract. Those are a little bit different. So we're talking the old traditional contract plans. If you were to decide to cancel your contract before that 2 years is up, then they charge you a fee. And the reasoning behind that is we're basically subsidizing the phone. Instead of making you pay $700 for a phone, you only pay $99 because you're paying us a monthly fee. And they used to take a certain amount off that early termination fee every month. Well, now Verizon basically said, now you got to be with us 8 months before we even think about knocking anything off that fee. Which, I mean, come on, Verizon. You guys, I think last year was made the most money of any other carrier. Heck, probably more than Sprint and T-Mobile combined. So really, do you really need? I swear, I think they saw people were happy with them and said, no, we got to make you ticked off at us again.
I do want to add on to that real quick before we give Verizon too much trash. I mean, they do deserve it for this, but I just want to point out that, as Chuck said, after those 8 months, there is no early termination fee deduction for those first 8 months, but for months 8 to 18 when you're with Verizon, you will get a $10 off every month you're with them through those 8 to 18 months. And then come months 19 through 23, you're looking at $20 off your ETF per month, and then month 24, so your last year of that 2-year contract, you get a $60 off ETF. And if you do the math, it comes out to pretty much the exact same thing that you got before. But even at that, that's 8 whole months you're going without an early termination fee deduction. So say you're like 7 months in your contract with Verizon, and then maybe the service isn't so good, or you want to switch to AT&T or T-Mobile, you're not going to get that $70 deduction you would before. So this went into effect. If you were grandfathered into a contract before the date, you're okay, but it did go into effect on November 14th. So if you're signing a contract with Verizon any time now, you might want to maybe reconsider that if you're maybe thinking about jumping the gun within 8 months or so.
Yeah, and to be completely honest with you, and I tell people this all the time, it's not, these days, it's not worth a contract. Either just buy the phone outright, or Verizon, what do they call it, the Edge program, or AT&T's Next, or if you can get T-Mobile, which, T-Mobile, if anyone's listening here, would you please just hurry up and buy someone so that, you can get better spectrum? And go with the monthly payment of the phone, because then you're not locked into a contract. You don't have to deal with the bull. You're still, it ends up working out to basically the same amount that you would end up paying if you bought the subsidized phone anyway. Because, for example, if you look at, say, Verizon, then you pay, you pay your data plan, whatever that is, and then if you're on contract, you pay $40 a month for your phone. Well, if you're not on contract, you don't buy the subsidized phone, you pay $15 a month, and then most average smartphones, you probably pay $30 a month, $25 a month for the phone. So you end up paying the exact same amount as if you were paying the subsidized price, only you're not locked into the contract. So that's the way I always recommend going.
Right, and like a few years ago, I mean, like, no contract options weren't really that big, but now pretty much T-Mobile, they don't have any contracts at all. Sprint, AT&T, and Verizon all offer their own kind of form of service that's not technically contract-based. And then you look at Ting, Consumer Cellular, Cricket, just to name a few of like the no contract service providers. I mean, your options are insanely wide nowadays. So really, contracts are still kind of the bread and butter of this industry, but at this day and age, there's really no reason why you should be locking yourself into that contract. Because I know my family and I, we used to be in one with Verizon, and that ETF, especially with 3 lines, can be absolutely brutal. So if you can avoid it, you really should, because it is no fun trying to get out of that, or really just being locked with one device and with one service provider for those 2 years does add up over time.
Yeah, I mean, and even Republic Wireless is an option. You got a weird looking phone, or not weird looking, but limited phone options. Let me say that with Republic. But there's a ton of options for no contracts, so get away from contracts. Chuck, you got one more thing before we hit our espresso shot. Talk to us about the Google thing.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Republic Wireless. Republic Wireless is awesome. We should definitely do a show on them. I just got my mother's dad and his wife on Republic Wireless. and my wife's uncle and aunt on Republic, and they love it because it was the only way they could get a smartphone without a data plan, and they're absolutely thrilled with it. But I won't. We'll talk about that later, or some other show. Google MVNO, is it MVNO? Anyway, I forget what that stands for, but basically, like we were talking about before, Cricket, any of those, what these guys are, they're called MVNOs because they don't actually own the towers, they don't own the spectrum, they actually buy the spectrum from the big boys. So they buy it from Sprint or T-Mobile or AT&T or Verizon. There's been rumors on and off that Google has been looking at becoming their own MVNO. Which would be extremely smart for them. The rumor surfaced a few months ago around them possibly teaming up with Dish Network or buying Dish Network to get the spectrum to do the MVNO stuff and kind of to supplement the Google Fiber. So basically be able to offer you fiber and phone together, which would be awesome. Well, the rumor kind of came back alive again today from some trusted sources. Of course, that's what we always hear: trusted sources. Who know something. Okay, they know as much as me going and flipping a coin in the air and saying yes or no most times. But this would be awesome if Google could actually pull this off. And if anyone can pull this off, it's Google. Yeah. And what really kind of interested me about this rumor was that most MVNOs, they buy spectrum from the cheap boys. So they buy it from T-Mobile, they buy it from Sprint, some of them buy it from AT&T. Almost no one buys from Verizon because obviously Verizon's the most expensive. Well, this rumor says that Google is going to buy from Verizon and Sprint and basically use either their LTE or their CDMA network. The CDMA part I'm not sure I buy, but it would be extremely smart for Google to buy from Verizon, use their LTE network, especially once they get VoLTE rolled out. So rumor alert. Let me just highlight that. This is not fact. I don't know anything that anyone else doesn't know. All I'm saying is it would be extremely smart for Google because they can finally sell the phones and the plans and finally not have to worry about carriers and kind of do whatever they want. And if they went with Verizon, they're gonna have service everywhere. So there's no issues with what some MVNO have issues with, which is dead spots.
Interesting. I like rumors, so and especially that one. That one sounds like it'd be a good one. And speaking of Verizon and their networks, ETFs, and phones and services, Joe has a Espresso. I say that every week. Espresso Shot. Like I don't know English. I'm sorry for my grammar Nazis, especially Tony out there. Joe has an Espresso Shot for us this week, as he does every week. And this week we're looking at the Sony Xperia Z3v. My favorite part of that phone is the V because letters.
Letters are fun.
Go ahead, Joe. What's the Espresso Shot? What's brewing?
Well, this is the Sony Xperia Z3v, which I had a fun time saying when I was doing my voiceovers for the review today. Didn't take like 50 takes or anything to get that name down the first time. But this is basically just a Sony Xperia Z3 that came out earlier this year, just rebranded for Verizon. You've got the V thrown on the name because it's Verizon. Apparently branding on the device wasn't enough for them. So we are looking at basically the Sony Xperia Z3 here. 5.2 inch if my camera says to show that. A 5.2 inch 1920 by 1080p Full HD display, Snapdragon 801, 2.5 gigahertz quad-core processor, 3 gigs of RAM, pretty basic stuff for a flagship smartphone. But looking at the spec sheet for this, and calling out Tony's nickname here even though he's not here with the spec sheet, but two of the biggest features for the phone are the camera and the battery life, at least on paper. Battery life, we're looking at a 3200 milliamp hour battery, which is pretty huge, just because if compare that to the OnePlus One, which has a 3100 milliamp hour battery, and this is some of the best battery life I have gotten on a phone to date, because it's magical, unicorn, fairy dust, whatever you want to call it. But, in regards to touch on battery life real quick with the Z3V, just since I'm talking about it right now, I live in an area where Verizon, no carrier service provider is strong in my area. Even Verizon or AT&T, I'm still rocking 1 or 2 bars most of the time, just because in the wonderful rural world and town of Lawrence, Michigan, it's pretty much a dead zone no matter who you're on. And in case you don't know, that does put an immense drain on battery life if you're searching for a service like that throughout the day. So your results are always going to vary with your battery life. But for me, when I was just using the phone kind of off and on throughout the day, maybe picking it up here and there to reply to a text message or an email or something, or up on Facebook and Twitter, just kind of normal daily stuff, not really streaming a lot of video or playing games on it, I was actually able to get one full day, 13 hours and 9 minutes of use out of it, with about 3 hours and 17 minutes of screen on time. Now, another day when I was using it as much as I could, really trying to drain the battery, I got 15 hours and 45 minutes of usage with 3 hours and 41 minutes of screen on time. Now, that's not the absolute best battery life out there, but still 2 days of emailing and social network websites and selfie taking, whatever you want to call it, that's pretty good for a smartphone, especially if you're searching for service the whole time. So if you're in an area that's getting 4 or 5 bars of Verizon wireless network coverage, you're going to probably see improved battery performance on here. But even 2 days of just moderate usage is still pretty solid for smartphones. In regards to that camera, I was kind of interested by this because we do have a 20.7 megapixel sensor on here, which on paper you'd kind of expect this thing to be pretty phenomenal. And while it does take really good pictures, it's not something you'd expect that a 20.7 megapixel sensor would take. Now, one thing I do want to mention, though, that actually threw me off when I was using the camera, when you do open up the camera application, by default you are in the superior auto mode. Now, by default, the superior auto mode is maxed out at 8 megapixels. So if you do want to change that, you actually have to go into your camera settings and then hop into your manual shooting mode. And then from there, you have to manually select the 20.7 megapixel camera setting, which did kind of throw me off, and I'm not sure entirely why Sony put the camera like that and putting the 20.7 megapixel setting in the normal auto mode, because I know that took me quite some time. I actually had to look up some different reviews of the phone to realize that, by default, you have to go into this manual mode to access the full resolution of the camera. So I'm still kind of scratching my head at why Sony decided to implement the camera like that. But just out of the box with the superior auto mode, it does take good pictures, don't get me wrong about that. But just for something that's touting a 20.7 megapixel shooter, and that's really one of the biggest marketing tactics for the phone, I just felt kind of disappointed by it. Now, low-light performance is pretty good and is a bit better than you usually get on most smartphones, but detail sometimes just looks a bit grainy and is just not anything that's going to really wow you or impress you. I know one thing with the camera that I was talking about with Alvie before we get on here, Sony just knows how to put in fun effects with their camera software, especially with the AR fun and AR effect. Basically, you can, I can hold my Z3 up to my desk over here or something, and it'll show on the screen like dinosaurs and stuff walking around the table, or I can like sling virtual bombs at my coffee cup or something, and that stuff is just fun to do. I mean, you can I sat here for like 5 or 10 minutes just like throwing bombs and crap onto my desk before we get on here. And I mean, that just stuff never gets old, especially for people like us who don't grow up and just like to play with phones all day. That's a pretty sweet thing to do. Now, in regards to software, I haven't used too many Sony products, so I don't get the chance to use Sony's custom skin for Android all that often. But you can kind of see off the bat, this is just a stock launcher that the Z3v is running, and it's very reminiscent to kind of that of stock Android. If you go to the application drawer, this is kind of reminiscent to Google Now with the big icons and stuff. What's nice about Sony's UI is that you can actually swipe over and you can search for your applications or sort them by downloaded applications, your most used, or alphabetical, which is just kind of nice to have extra functionality built into it right there. Now, one of the things I really like about Sony's custom skin is that if you hold down on the any blank space on the home screen, one of your options in the bottom is called themes, and the brightness level is insanely up, so you're not really seeing that too well. But if you do hop to the themes section, basically if you've used CyanogenMod or PackROM or any other Android ROM in the past before, where you can apply a theme to your phone and basically change every aspect of it, that's pretty much what Sony has done here with the Z3v. So you can kind of see right now with my home screen right now, I've just got kind of the standard Sony Xperia wallpaper with Sony's custom on-screen navigational buttons right there. But if I go ahead, hop into themes, and I go ahead and switch it to the Android L theme, which I found on the Google Play Store, and I switch that, you can see that it switches it to the Android Lollipop wallpaper with the Android Lollipop application drawer icon and the on-screen navigational buttons. And having that level of functionality out of the box in a OEM custom skin is something we don't see from Samsung's TouchWiz or LG's Optimus UI or even stock Android. That's only a feature up until Sony's software, and I'm not sure how long they've been using this feature for. But it's really cool to have that deep of customization with the phone. Now, another couple of cool software tricks you can do with it, you can go ahead and hop into your recent app section, And you can pop up different kind of mini applications, so I can be in any other app and have a calculator app right there, and there's also a web browser and different things like that. So not the most elegant way to multitask on the phone, but it's still nice to have custom software features on here that add practicality and functionality to the overall experience, but it doesn't really bog down the OS, because the phone itself is still very snappy. I know I was playing Riptide GP2, I'm not sure why, but I noticed a couple dropped frames here or there, so not sure if that's just a Snapdragon 801 or something with Sony's software. It's nothing that's a deal breaker by any means, but it's just something after using the Snapdragon 805 on the Droid Turbo. I don't know if it's me just being snobby now with my processors, but it is something I was just able to see when I was using it. One thing I do want to point about the design, I hate, with a capital H, and very passionately hate dual glass construction phones. Yeah, they look pretty, and especially on the white model, because since it is white, fingerprints and stuff don't really show up like they would on the black model, but this is such a difficult phone to hold. Now granted, the sides are actually flat, so you do have a bit of a place to kind of grip it. Now, if these were round, it'd be just absolutely unusable. But the back, yes, it looks nice, but trying to hold this thing slips out of your hand so easily. And when you've got glass on the front and the back, a clumsy 17-year-old teenager like me, I'm dropping stuff all the time. I'm scared to take this thing on a sidewalk or something, afraid I'm going to drop it and have the back of the phone crack. So I do appreciate Sony for making it look nice, but it cannot get over the fact I will never own myself a dual glass smartphone. A couple other things with it, you've got IP certifications on here, so it's dust and water resistant, and you do have front firing speakers, which aren't up to the quality of HTC's boom sound, but are still definitely better than any side firing or rear firing speaker out there. So I've had this thing for about a week now. Hopefully I'll get the full review for the phone up on the Mobile Cup of Joe YouTube channel. Hopefully sometime early next week, get into the holiday season, so trying to get as many reviews and stuff up on the channel as we can. So overall, though, I really am liking this phone a lot. There isn't really necessarily a super big standout feature for the phone, and a big one single feature of it, but in general it's just a very nice package. The design looks good, although I'm not a fan of the glass in the back. The software is very minimal, works really nice. You've got a lot of Sony included applications on here, which you may not necessarily need them, but they are designed nicely and they're very smooth and kind of nice minimal looking design and feel to them. Very fast phone. Display looks incredible. It's bounds and years ahead of the past triluminous display technologies Sony's using on their older phones with the god-awful viewing angles. No problems on here whatsoever. There's a kind of a tiny bit of light bleed if you tilt the phone and look at it, but again, that's just me being picky about displays, because that's what we're not paid to do it, but that's kind of our job with these phones. But overall, if you're on Verizon Wireless, if you maybe don't like the design of the Droid Turbo, because that's still, in my opinion, probably the best device on Verizon Wireless right now, aside from the Nexus 6. But if you're looking for a new phone, like for yourself or for a friend or family member, this is one of the best phones in Verizon Wireless's lineup right now. I definitely recommend it. This phone is pretty much everything you want, and it looks really nice doing it, and I absolutely love Sony's custom software on here. So if you don't like the Droid Turbo, maybe don't like the design, or you don't like how big the Nexus 6 is, the Sony's Xperia Z3 is probably one of your best bets this holiday season. And with Black Friday coming up, you can probably expect Verizon to have some killer deals on this phone, hopefully this Black Friday.
Motorex, excuse me.
No, yeah, hey Joe, thank you for reviewing and doing an espresso shot on a Sony product. You guys that have watched and listened to the show in the past, you know I'm a Sony fanboy. But there's been some stuff in the Q&A, so good job, Joe, and thank you for sharing that. But let me run through some stuff over here before we hit our roundtable. Mark has been tuning in, and he's got a few things to share, so let's run through this real quick. It says the wireless auction is currently going on and has reached an all-time bid price, and who are the top two? Verizon and AT&T, and they're all about the money. Yes, agreed.
Yeah, and let me tell you what one of the biggest problems here is. What most people may or may not know is that when Verizon bought their 700 megahertz, I think that's what their LTE is. When I believe it's 700. So when Verizon bought their 700 megahertz spectrum, part of the agreement with them buying that was an open. You were supposed to be able to. You were supposed to be able to bring any device to the Verizon network that you wanted that would run on the 700 megahertz band. And the test of this was the Nexus LTE that was supposed to work on Verizon's network. And Verizon said, nope, it doesn't pass our certification. which was completely against part of their agreement in buying that spectrum, and the FCC did nothing. And so you're right. It is all about the money. And furthermore, the problem is even these agreements that are put in place, no one enforces them. So yeah, sure, I'll agree to be open and then not do it because no one's going to do anything about it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's like Mark says, a giant shell game. Absolutely. He also agrees with your Z3 review a little bit there. Joe says that his Z3 on T-Mobile. What you got, Chuck?
I wanted to mention something here. The Z3 on T-Mobile and the Z3v are very, very different phones. And I'm sure, Joe, you could probably jump in about this. The Z3 is the Z3. The Z3v, from my understanding, is more like the Z2. If you kind of look at the specs and the software and stuff. Joe, please jump in and tell me if I'm wrong or not. But I think that the Z3v is a fairly different phone than the Z3 that you get on T-Mobile.
Really?
I was actually under the impression that they were pretty similar, so now you have me second guessing myself on that right there. But actually, if you're saying between the Z2 and the Z3 and the Z3 are actually very similar products in their own right. So really, between those two, there's not really too much different. But just looking through the specs right now of the Z3 on T-Mobile, Android 4.4 KitKat, which is what we got on the Z3v here. Snapdragon 801, 20.7 megapixel camera, 3 gigs of RAM. So it looks like it's pretty much specs-wise the same thing, but I don't know if I can get a picture of it. But I think the only real difference I'm seeing is that the speaker placement of the front-firing speakers looks a bit different, and the corners are actually rounded on here. So there you go. There's my worst-case scenario. You can see here that the corners on the Z3v are actually flat, but on the Z3 on T-Mobile, Sony actually rounded those. So I think that's the only big difference. Because specs-wise, I think these devices are nearly identical, but they were pretty much identical with the stock Z2 and the stock Z3 as well.
All right. Well, I was wrong. Not the first time. Won't be the last, I can guarantee that.
Smaller step up than as usual from a 2 to a 3. So. And then before we hit our round table, let me hit Andrew. He's been on the show with us a few times. It says, going back to our Verizon talk, it's all about the early termination fees. And then, Chuck, you may be able to chime in on this. How much longer until Verizon stops with data overages?
Never.
Exactly. Yep, I agree.
That's how they make their money. Data overages, ETFs, contracts, locking you in. That's how Verizon makes their money. And look, T-Mobile, I think it's awesome what you're doing. I really do. I think that everything T-Mobile does is great. But until T-Mobile and/or someone else has the capacity that Verizon has for cellular network, their signal. I mean, I literally can be in the middle of a wheat field here in Kansas, 100 miles from the closest civilization and have 4G LTE for Verizon. I can't even get LTE in my town from anyone else except for Verizon. That's fairly impressive. So until someone has that, it's all just gimmicks, and Verizon's, they might play a little bit of ball, but I don't think that I think they're going to play a little bit of ball, but I don't think they're going to take away their cash cow.
No, here's what I see, and however long it takes to get there. Verizon's going to be that old company that we all make fun of looking back because they didn't change their system. Because they're the ones that are sticking to contracts. They're the ones that are sticking to early termination fees, data overages, and all that kind of stuff. So eventually, once somebody comes in there, and it may be Google, who knows who it is, but it'll be somebody bigger, or the other guys jump in and get together and kind of gang up on them. But Verizon will be that old grandpa that's like, back in my day, we used to do things differently. That's how we used to talk to friends. Anyway, all right, let's get onto our round table.
Before we do, real quick, Alvie, Aaron, who we had on last week, actually just tweeted me and said that he also, on a number of podcasts he's listened to, have said that the Z3v is somewhere between the Z3 and the Z2. So just want to throw that out there. Aaron had kind of mentioned that it's kind of somewhere between the two, or that's what he had heard, at least.
No one knows.
Bottom line, the build quality is nice, and wherever you have to get it, and it's a good phone. Fair enough.
I complain about the glass back, but this really is a very beautifully constructed phone. You've got a metal frame around it too. I mean, it's a very, very pretty phone. I love the design on my OnePlus One, but I mean, even though it's got pretty beefy bezels in the top and bottom because of those front-firing speakers, this is a very, very sexy phone. It's definitely something that does look good carrying around with you. It kind of makes you stick out because it's a very long phone. It's 5.2-inch display, and the OnePlus One is 5.5 inches. But height-wise, it's pretty similar, and it's a very tall and narrow phone. It does feel good in the hand, aside from the glass back, which I wish they would not have implemented. But design-wise and built, the way it's built is very premium feeling. So don't get me wrong about that. Me complaining about the glass back. It's a very, very nicely constructed device.
Well, and nicely constructed means premium. So, man, I wish Tony was here because he's super spec sheet. But let's get on to our round table, which is now a triangle table. So if you're joining in late, you're doing great. This is about to get good. What makes a device or phone or tablet, whatever, superior? And it could be a number of things. So I'll go ahead and get it started with my thoughts. What makes it superior is really the culmination. It's the sum of the parts, really, because you can have an awesome battery, and the screen is just terrible. You can have a terrible build quality, but man, it sure does run smooth and quick and all that. So, to me, superior, it's got to be a balance of all of that kind of stuff. Because just because you can have a battery that can last 3 days, if you can't use the phone, then it's pointless. It's not superior to me. If you have this awesome-looking display, which we're seeing this on some of these LG phones especially, it's got this 2K, 4K display, and then but the battery life, it'll only last half a day, maybe a full day if you baby it, something like that. So really, it's a culmination of all of it that makes it superior to me. To me, it's got to have. I'll still go 2 gigs of RAM, even though really it needs to be 3, but just because that's compared to everything else, it needs to have. 1080p is as high as I want my phone and smaller devices to go. So if you're looking 6 inches and smaller, I want 1080p. You can go 2K if you're going bigger on a tablet. Definitely not 4K. You need 50 inches to notice 4K. So I don't need that. So I need a decent display, decent build quality. I don't want it to feel like it's going to break when I drop it. I don't want a glass back. I want it to be a battery that can last use without overheating, and it needs to me, I want to import it, so it's going to have all the bands anyway. It's going to have LTE, GSM, CDMA, UMTS, all that kind of stuff. That's superior to me. Across the board, it's one of those phones, devices, tablets, whatever it is, that when people grab it, they go, wow, this works well. And it's like your Sony that you're talking about, Joe. You may not use all those features. I've got Xperia apps on mine that I'll never touch, but it's just the culmination of all of it. The way it all comes together is a beautiful thing. It just works well together. It doesn't have to be stock Android. I don't mind it being skinned, but it needs to all work. So that's my definition, briefly, before I start rebutting you guys as you jump in. That's my definition of a superior or premium device today. That will change. If you ask me, probably in 2015, it's going to have minimum 3 gigs of RAM. Until battery life increases, I don't want to see screen resolution increase beyond what it is right now because they can't keep up. But that's just me. Chuck or Joe, you guys jump on in. What is premium to you?
Well, I'll say in the past couple of years, we've really seen smartphone OEMs and manufacturers, since processors and displays and cameras have all kind of met in the middle, and we're really not seeing too much progress there, really any leaps and bounds. It's kind of all been about the software recently. So you look at someone like Samsung, who takes the approach of throwing the kitchen sink and everything, face detection and eye scrolling, and I don't know, taking a selfie by waving your fist or whatever the heck they've got on their phones nowadays. I don't know, but you look at something like that, or LG, that throws in absolutely everything, or LG where you can say kimchi, which is some Indian food or something, to take a picture. I mean, you've got those companies that think that, if we throw in absolutely everything we can, this is going to make it a superior device. But then you look at something like Sony, whereas Alvie said, yeah, maybe that we do have a lot of Sony applications in here and different Sony features, but the way they're presented is a lot more minimalistic. It's not in your face like TouchWiz or one of LG's skins are. So I think for me, at least on the software side of things, I like how Sony handles it, or someone like Motorola does, where it's pretty reminiscent to that of stock Android, even though granted Sony's custom skin may be a bit more heavy than necessarily stock Android or Motorola's skin is. But I do like how it's presented. It's clean, it's minimal. The software features are there if I want to use them. They're not punching me in the face and screaming at me like Samsung or LG is. On top of that, though, in kind of regards to hardware, like Alvie said, I'm perfectly fine with 1080p. I don't understand 2K. I won't understand it for a while now. It just makes me mad when I get a device like that. The Droid Turbo, if that had a 1080p display, that would be a perfect smartphone. But no, we got to throw a 2K display and a 5.2-inch screen, which if Motorola, if you want to kind of write me and tell me how that made sense, I'll be more than happy to listen to that. But
You have to ask Verizon.
yeah, they're Verizon again. Don't make people happy. Why would we do that? But 1080p display is exactly, yeah, I'm making them happy tonight. But if it's 5.5 inches or above, really you don't need 2K unless you're talking the 6-inch range. Like the Nexus 6, go ahead, put 2K on there because that's a massive smartphone. Me personally, I would not want to get anything with 2 gigs of RAM. I'll kind of side with Tony here. I'll act as spec sheet since he's not on the show tonight. Go ahead and throw in 3 gigs of RAM. I'll take 4 gigs in 2015. I'll go ahead and bring it on me. But Snapdragon 805 or something, just internals that all work well together. I don't need to have a Snapdragon 810 or whatever the next latest thing from Qualcomm is. Just a solid amount of RAM and a solid processor that's going to last me maybe a year or two. I mean, I'm not going to be with a phone for 2 years, but maybe at least 6 months or a year. That's going to stay good and is not going to degrade over time. So just stuff that works, software that's minimal, that has features in it that work good. We really, for me personally, I don't need a big flagship standout feature in a phone. I don't care about laser autofocus. I don't care about scrolling my web browser with twitching my eyeballs or whatever. Just give me software that works good. I've got features if I want to use them. Give me a design that's elegant, that's not going to break if I drop it. And for the love of God, don't give me a glass back. I'm not going to start on that again, but please don't do that. Battery life, that lasts a couple days, so just make sure everything works together. The phone lasts a long time. It looks pretty. It's a solid construction, and I could care less if I have to say kimchi to take a picture with my phone.
Too true, too true. Chuck, what about you? What is premium or superior for you?
What is premium for me? If I could take the M8 and the Moto X, and if they could have a kid, I'd be pretty happy. So don't get me wrong. I've actually found that last year's Moto X and this year's Moto X, in my opinion, is the perfect phone. I did like my M8 though. I was pretty super happy with that. The M8 build quality and those boom sound speakers, man, it's hard to argue with that. I did love that. So if I could take like the M8 and kind of put the Moto X in that with Motorola software, oh man, I think that'd be the ultimate phone. So for me, unless you have a 2K display, which I don't think you need in a smartphone, period, 2 gigs should be plenty enough. And to be honest with you, the only reason you'd have an 805 as opposed to an 801 is, once again, a 2K display. So if you were a person who wanted a 2K display, yeah, you need 3 gigs of RAM, you need the 805. Me, that's not me. Me, an 801, 2 gigs of RAM, fine. One thing I do like though, and some people are moving away from it, is I do like the expandable memory. I do like being able to slap that extra memory in there when I need it, especially to store, videos or those kind of things. And I know Google's kind of said, we don't really like, expandable memory. I do. So ideal phone for me right now, probably an 801, 2 gigs of RAM is all I need. Preferably 32 gigs of RAM internal, although I can deal with 16. My Moto X only has 16, and I'm shockingly getting by pretty good with it. I want a fairly stock Android experience. I don't need 100% stock. HTC Sense actually was okay with me. It had some nice features. Like Joe was saying, I don't mind if you put a little bit of skin or a little bit of features on top of it, but make them something useful. Okay. Once again, I don't care about saying kimchi to take a picture. Okay. I'm gonna snap a button. All right. Or I don't care about Fing Fong or whatever to open up a calendar or something. Whatever. Whatever the Samsung thing is with the whatever they like to do. Samsung is full of gimmicks in TouchWiz. I mean, if you look at TouchWiz, oh my goodness. So to me, Motorola is the absolute perfect combination of stock Android with super nice features. So if I take a look at the Moto X, the Moto display is awesome, which, by the way, if anyone notices, is now adaptive display in Lollipop. Trusted devices from the Moto X, well, that's now in Lollipop. I think that Motorola, the software that they've added on top of stock Android is perfect. So to me, I guess if I had to say anything right now, the Moto X is probably as close as it comes to a perfect device for me right now.
And that's currently available. You're not looking future, so that's not too bad. Go ahead, Joe.
I was gonna say for my kind of like perfect device, it's kind of available. I'm not gonna get into that because that's a whole another topic of debating and conversation right there. But for me, the OnePlus One is kind of like the perfect smartphone I've had, just because the screen size. My cats are fighting. Okay.
Joe, apparently they don't agree with you. They don't like your OnePlus.
They don't. I gotta. Verizon's sending their PR reps at me already. But so we'll go ahead and talk about OnePlus real quick before my cats come up here and kill me. But the screen size for me, 5.5 inches, is perfect because it's still manageable for me to hold in one hand, and I can kind of sort of operate it in one hand without having to use both my hands. So it's still easy enough for one-handed operation, but you can still have a big enough canvas on there to stream your HD content and play your games on there. The design of this thing, although the sandstone black, it doesn't really hold up that well. You can't really see it, but just because of the material that OnePlus use, it does get dirty very easily, and I have to clean this thing maybe once every other week or so just to keep it looking nice. But the sandstone texture they use on here grips to my hand. It feels really good. It feels incredibly durable. And just the different little design tweaks OnePlus made with it and the software, I'm not running it on here, but CyanogenMod 11S had a lot of customization features in there. It was very simple, and it was pretty much stock Android, and you could leave it like stock Android if you wanted to use it like that. Or you could go as far into it as you wanted to and really trick out the device and make it how you wanted it to be yours. The camera is a 13-megapixel sensor. It works beautifully. The speakers, they are rear firing, but they do sound really good too. They're not boom sound by any means, but they do sound really loud, and they have nice bass levels and everything. And the battery on there, 3100 milliamp hour unit, magical unicorns, fairy dust, however you want to describe the OnePlus battery life, is phenomenal. So for me, and then you factor in that price, $349 for 64 gigs of storage, which is more than I'm ever going to need. Just that whole package right there, even though OnePlus's issues as a company aside, for me, that's personally been kind of my favorite smartphone, my perfect smartphone, or at least the closest thing to a perfect smartphone that I have had the chance to use so far this year.
Well, all right. So, are we going to talk about dream devices or perfect devices? Let me chime in on that because I've got some stuff to add about that too. So, you guys know that I had used my 6.5-inch Sony Z Ultra for about a year and sold it to get the new Z3 tablet compact, and I'm very happy with it so far as a personal device. But really, as a phone, the Z Ultra was better for that. The 8 inches it's tough to manipulate, especially with one hand. You can forget it. I had figured out a way to do my 6.5-inch that way, but the 8-inch it's a two-handed job, so no big deal. Perfect device. Let's dream a little bigger than what we've got. It's foldable display. You're looking probably trifold, so it'll fold like a piece of paper. That way it'll be a phone. Unfold it for a tablet. All-day battery life. That's no big deal. Resolution's high enough. But to me, a superior or premium device, it's got to change a little bit of what we're doing now. For the last 3, 4, 5 years, it's been a brick of glass that has improved specs every year, and I'm tired of that. This Selfish OS is kind of cool because it's different than Android and iOS, but for the most part, it's still apps and all that. I'm tired of apps. I think we should get rid of apps and have some type of better web ecosystem or something, because right now I've got 35,000 apps installed on my tablet, and I use all of them like once a week, and I shouldn't have to do that. I shouldn't have to go into millions of apps. It should just kind of all be together. I'm, of course, dreaming 2017 a little bit here, but I know some of the stuff is coming out. But premium device, superior device, dream device would be big enough to use as a tablet, small enough to use, modular style, I guess, kind of like that Project Era is, or some of Samsung's displays are looking. All-day battery life, killer camera, and Chuck, talking about what you are with expandable memory for SD cards. I dream of a day where my internet connection is fast enough to hit my terabyte cloud storage, so I don't have to worry about that, and I don't have to expand. Every picture I take is fine; it's up there, and every movie I've got up there streams seamlessly to my phone. But that's me dreaming a little bit. It's a little farther out than what's currently available. Of current devices, I would probably still go with my Sony Z Ultra, 6.5 inches, 6.5 millimeters thick. LTE, HSPA plus, all that kind of stuff. Super fast, super quick, spec'd out. It was a beautiful device, and it was, for me, perfect. I know it's a little different than premium and superior, but it is a perfect device for me.
Alvie,
What do you guys
I'll say real quick.
Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
No, I was gonna say real quick, get a comment from Mark in the Q&A, and he said superior to him is how it feels in the hand. If you had to choose one thing, he does make a good remark there, because I mean, you can talk about specifications and displays and all that, but when you're using a phone, you are holding it all day. At least if you're resting on a table or something. But that is definitely something to keep in mind too, how it feels in the hand. I mean, I don't want to hold a faux leather, a cheap hyperglazed plastic Samsung phone with me all day. I don't care if it's more durable than an HTC One. I want that beautiful looking construction, that good feel in the hand. So that was a good point by Mark, though. I don't know if you guys want to go off that anymore, but thanks for leaving that in there and bringing us your thought of what makes this superior device to you.
No, I agree with him.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Chuck?
I was going to say, Alvie, I want to buy you the original iPhone. There was no apps for that. I don't know if anyone actually remembers or not, but the original iPhone had no apps, and Steve Jobs was very, very much against apps. That's what actually was the original reason behind the iPhone jailbreak scene, was because there was no app store, and that's how you could actually get apps onto your phone. So I'll buy you an original iPhone, Alvie, then you'll be happy. But let me tell you what is not a perfect device, and I'm sorry, Google and HTC, but it is this device right here, which is the Nexus 9. Yeah.
Shots fired.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know whose decision it was to go with the Tegra K1. Stupid. Sorry, but I'm just going to flat out say it. And this is a device that needs 3 gigs of RAM.
Yes.
It really does. It absolutely does. And they went with 2 gigs, which was, once again, I don't know who decided to do that. Stupid. At least they put front-facing speakers on it. So they gave us something. But you know what I want? We're talking about the future here, Alvie.
Yeah.
I want a smartphone that closes clamshell and opens up when you want to use it. And you want to know why I want that? Because I'm tired of buying cases for my phone because I'm scared to death of scratching the screens on the phone. Let me close it and stick it in my pocket.
What? Hey, Corning Gorilla Glass 4 is supposed to be out, and it's supposed to be almost as strong as Sapphire.
Yeah, okay. I'll believe it when I see it. Wasn't Corning Gorilla Glass 3 supposed to be the same thing?
Oh, well, yeah, so was 2, and really so was the first one.
So, okay,
Fourth time's the charm, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I do agree with Chuck, though, because I know when I had my original Moto X, I returned that thing like twice just because there was like a hairline scratch or something on the display. So every time that screen was off and I saw that, it drove me up a tree seeing that. So anything that would help protect the display, if manufacturers could figure out a way to kind of put that into a clamshell device and not have like a weird black dividing line across the screen when the phone is open or closed. That would definitely be something awesome. I know there's actually a company at CES, I can't think of the name right now, that kind of has something similar to that. So if we can maybe see that, I would guess within the next 5 or so years, hopefully, that'd definitely be something to be interested in. And I know Samsung actually, too, at CES last year as well, or this year, 2014, they actually showed off kind of in a promo video of this kind of cylinder device where or a cylinder-looking object, and you'd press a button, and like the display for the tablet would roll out too. So that is something they're working on. I don't know how far in the progress they're with that, if they're even constructing it yet. But there's a lot of different form factors and stuff. Because you think of smartphones, and really the only smartphones we have right now are these kind of candy bar style phones, or whatever the correct term is for it, where it's basically just a brick in your display. So I think there's a whole bunch of different form factors that we're going to see within the next few years that really we haven't seen yet, and that could put a big change in the smartphone industry and really how we interact with our smartphones right now.
I think we'll see that next year. I think 2015 we'll see the first production rollout of some type of folding display. It'll be terrible, and it won't work right, and there'll be plenty of issues with it. But I think, honestly, next year we'll start to see somebody try to push it out. I mean, because even with the Samsung Galaxy Note 4 Edge, the shortest name for a phone ever, at least a edge on the end of it, not a foldable at all or anything like that, but at least kind of the tech that we're looking for. And then it protects, open it up like a book or open it up like a trifold or something like that. Protects it and, and looks kind of cool. But who knows? Let's just go ahead and get to the future and let's see what it's got for us.
Yeah.
All right. Any other closing thoughts? We're kind of a little over on time about what is premium or what is superior for a device. Anything we hadn't touched just yet?
No, I think it's personal preference. Whatever's best for you. I mean, it varies greatly from person to person.
Yeah, I'm really, Mark, you summed it, nail on the head, how it feels in the hand, if you had to choose one thing, and that's really the culmination of all of it, kind of like what I was talking about at the beginning. If it holds right in your hand, which is going to be bigger for some, smaller for others, and just, if you're happy with it at the end of the day, fine. Some people it's going to be an iPhone, not me, an iPhone 1. No, Chuck, hush. I don't want the need for apps, not that I don't want the accessibility for apps. But really, how it feels in the hand, and are you happy with it at the end of the day?
Here you go, Tony. I'm sending it to you. I still have it.
That's fantastic.
Actually, This might be the 3G. This might not be the original one. I can't remember.
But seriously, apps are stupid at this point. That I've got to install seriously a couple dozen apps to go do something. But, that's a topic for another day. So let's go ahead and hit. We don't have too many people to talk about, but Chuck, I always start left to right. What's going on for you this week? You got anything going on other than the American holiday that is Thanksgiving?
No, Thanksgiving. I have gotten my order in with our butcher for the fresh turkey and ham and pies and all the other, things that a fat guy like me loves to eat. So, Thanksgiving's a fat guy's favorite holiday. Other than that, I'm really, really hoping, although I seriously doubt it's going to happen, that maybe we might see a soak test on Verizon for the Moto X Lollipop. Fingers crossed this week. We're kind of getting towards about when they did the soak test last year for KitKat. And they were pretty fast last year. The Pure Edition already has it. Has had it for a couple weeks. So my guess is it's just in testing right now with the carriers. So fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
Very nice, very nice. What about you for Mobile Cup of Joe? What's going on for you this week? What's brewing?
Well, we got a Thanksgiving. Again, like Chuck said, we kind of do an unconventional Thanksgiving with my family. There's a conservation club, kind of a nice log cabin out in the country that my entire insane family gets together and goes to, and there's a shooting range there. So all of the guys go down there and shoot guns for a couple hours and then come back and eat turkey and pumpkin pie and all that delicious stuff. So definitely looking forward to that. But in regards to the channel right now, I do have I'm working on the Sony Xperia Z3v review and still trying to nail down that name when I'm doing these voiceovers and the intros for the videos. But this should hopefully be going up sometime early next week, and I still actually have to get the unboxing video up for that because it's been rendered for a couple days now and just sitting on my computer's hard drive. So hopefully that'll be uploaded tonight. But aside from that, that's the only product I have in right now. Crossing fingers, I can get a Nexus 6 in from AT&T hopefully pretty soon after our bashing of Verizon tonight. I don't know if we're going to be getting anything in for them to review recently. But just look for coverage of the Z3v, and aside from that, I will be stuffing my face with turkey and pumpkin pie and all that delicious stuff this next week.
Fantastic. Tasty, tasty stuff. For me, what's going on? I'm actually heading out of town Monday. One of my students graduates from Marine boot camp, basic training, whatever you want to call it. So I'll be going to Paris Island to go visit him and to watch his graduation. And also, I got into today the Samsung Galaxy Mega 2 on AT&T. So I'll be doing an unboxing tomorrow. Look for that on the channel, and also a review on that soon. Still working on the Sony Xperia Z3 tablet compact, kind of like you, Tony. I got to work on that long name. Can we just call them what they are instead of having 700 words? But anyway, so that's what's going on for me. A bunch of stuff to review, a bunch of stuff to unbox, and all that kind of stuff for the channel. And I'll be heading out of town. And a reminder for those of you guys who caught us later in the week, Tony currently is hopefully delivering a baby. So good luck, Tony. Congratulations, Tony. You guys send him well wishes and congratulate him on all the socials. And Fred is at a gig. He is a musician, so he had to depart for the time being, and he's out playing some music and all that. So we missed you, Fred. We missed you, Tony, even though you got to chat for just a bit. But they'll be back on the next show, absolutely. As soon as we can get a picture, we'll post a little picture of the baby as well. I'm hoping that we name it Alvie. I'm still holding out for that. But that's it for this show. We went over some news, some freshly brewed news. We also talked on our roundtable of what is a premium or superior device. You can catch all of this stuff on YouTube and also in our podcast. Now, Tony handles the podcast, so it may be a little late this week getting up there, but as soon as he can get a hold of it, he'll take care of the podcast and get that uploaded for us. And then as far as next week, we are still discussing Thanksgiving plans, so we may or may not have a show next week. Hopefully we can get at least a little roundtable in, but we'll post that on all the socials as soon as we know. As soon as you know, then you'll know. But that concludes this show for Chuck, bringing the ones and zeros, Mobile Cup of Joe, and the Mobile Cup of Joe channel. I'm Alvie, your bearded barista. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening and watching us and letting us be a part of your life. Hope you guys have a fantastic Thanksgiving if you're here in the States, and if you're not in the States, you guys have a great week and eat a turkey for us. But that's it for this week. Good night.